3 months after destroying my marriage, I still drive past the house in Phoenix where it all fell apart. Not my house. I lost that in the divorce. I drive by the pool house next door where I threw away 15 years of marriage for a 22-year-old boy who probably doesn't even remember my name now. I sit in my 10-year-old Honda, the only car I could afford after Carl took everything else, and stare at that little building like it might explain how I became this person. The kind of woman who seduces her neighbor's son. The kind of woman who deserves exactly what she got. Carl was a good husband. I need to say that first, get it out of the way, because everything that follows makes me the villain of this story. He worked hard at his investment firm, came home every night by 6, helped with dinner, asked about my day. He brought me flowers every Friday for 15 years, took me on anniversary trips to places I'd mentioned wanting to see. Supported my dream of starting an interior design business, even though I never followed through. He was faithful, kind, and generous with his time and money. He loved me, completely and without question. And I destroyed him because I was bored. Ethan came home from college in March. I'd known him since he was 7, when his parents, David and Sharon, moved in next door. I'd watched him grow up, had been to his high school graduation, sent him care packages his freshman year at Arizona State. He was like a nephew to me. That's what makes what happened so much worse. But when he came home that spring, something was different. Maybe it was me, hitting 38 and feeling invisible. Maybe it was him, grown into his height, confident from college, no longer the skinny kid who used to shoot hoops in the driveway. Maybe it was just the dangerous combination of proximity and opportunity. Whatever it was, when Sharon asked me to check on him while they went to Europe for 3 weeks, I should have said no. "He's 22, I'd laughed. "I think he can manage." "You know how boys are," Sharon had said, rolling her eyes. "Left alone, he'll live on pizza and beer. Just make sure he's eating real food. Maybe bring over some of those amazing cookies you make." I'd agreed because that's what good neighbors do. Because Sharon and I had been friends for 15 years. Because I had no reason not to trust myself around her son. Carl kissed me goodbye that first morning, same as always. "Love you," he said, grabbing his coffee and heading to work. "Don't forget we have dinner with my parents Sunday." "Love you too," I replied automatically, already thinking about going next door. I told myself I was just being neighborly. Brought over a batch of chocolate chip cookies, knocked on the door like a normal person. But when Ethan answered, shirtless and still damp from the shower, something shifted in my chest. "Mrs. Coleman," he said, smiling. "Mom said you might stop by." "Just checking if you need anything," I said, holding up the cookies like evidence of my good intentions. "You want to come in? I just made coffee." I should have handed him the cookies and left. Instead, I followed him into the kitchen, watched him pour 2 mugs, noticed how his hands were steady while mine shook slightly. We sat at the table where I'd shared hundreds of meals with his parents and talked. He was starting graduate school in the fall, engineering like his father. I told him about my day, the design blog I'd been thinking about starting, how Carl thought it was a waste of time. I hadn't meant to criticize my husband. It just slipped out. "Why does he think it's a waste?" Ethan asked. "He thinks I should focus on being realistic, get a regular job with benefits instead of chasing what he calls pipe dreams." "That's bullshit," he said, then caught himself. "Sorry, I just mean you should do what makes you happy." When was the last time someone had told me that? When was the last time I'd even thought about what made me happy? I stayed for 2 hours, until I realized Carl would be home soon and wonder where I was. "You can come by whenever," Ethan said as he walked me to the door. "It gets pretty quiet here." I went back the next day, and the next. Always with an excuse, bringing food, checking the plants, making sure the pool filter was working. But really, I just wanted to talk to someone who looked at me like I was interesting, who asked about my dreams instead of my grocery list, who made me remember I used to be someone with ambitions beyond matching throw pillows to sofa cushions. The afternoon everything changed, I'd brought over leftover lasagna. We were sitting by the pool, watching the brutal Phoenix sun bake the concrete, when he said it. "You know you're beautiful, right?" I laughed, uncomfortable. "Ethan, don't." "I'm serious, Mr. Coleman is lucky. Does he tell you that?" "We've been married 15 years, I said, as if that explained Carl's silence. "That's not an answer." He was right. Carl hadn't called me beautiful in years, hadn't looked at me with desire in even longer. We'd become roommates who happened to share a bed, polite strangers who'd forgotten how to see each other. "I should go," I said. "Stay," he said. "Please." The please did it. When was the last time someone had wanted my company enough to ask for it? I stayed. When he kissed me, I had 1,000 chances to stop it. When he leaned in, I could have pulled back. When his hand touched my face, I could have remembered I was married. When his lips met mine, I could have thought about Carl, about Sharon, about the wedding ring on my finger. Instead, I kissed him back like I was drowning and he was air. We broke apart at the sound of a car door. My heart hammered against my ribs as I ran back to my own yard, slipping through the gate just as Carl's car pulled into our garage. By the time he found me in the kitchen, I was chopping vegetables with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. "You okay?" he asked. "You look flushed." "Just hot from being outside," I lied. He believed me because he always believed me, because I'd never given him a reason not to, because after 15 years, you stop looking for signs of betrayal in the person you trust most. That night, lying next to Carl while he read quarterly reports in bed, I told myself it was a one-time mistake. I'd stay away from Ethan, focus on my marriage, be the wife Carl deserved. I lasted exactly 12 hours. The next morning, the moment Carl's car turned the corner, I was walking across the yard. Ethan was waiting, coffee made, smile widening when he saw me. "I thought you might not come back," he said. "I shouldn't be here." "But you are." We spent that morning in the pool house, on the daybed his parents kept for afternoon naps. I told myself it was just physical, just a release of tension that had been building for years. But afterward, as we lay there listening to the pool filter hum, I knew I was lying to myself. This wasn't about sex. It was about feeling alive again. About being wanted by someone who hadn't seen me at my worst, who didn't know I snored or left dishes in the sink or had given up on my dreams one compromise at a time. "What happens when your parents come back?" I asked. "We'll figure it out," he said, young enough to believe solutions existed for impossible situations. What followed were the most selfish 3 weeks of my life. Every morning I kissed my husband goodbye and walked into another man's arms. Every evening I cooked Carl dinner and asked about his day while my skin still hummed from another's touch. Every night I lay beside my husband and felt nothing but guilt and its twisted sister, exhilaration. I became an expert in deception. Showering before Carl came home, deleting texts the moment they arrived, creating elaborate lies about where I'd been, what I'd done, joining a fake book club to explain evening absences. Shopping trips that were really afternoons in that pool house, discovering parts of myself I'd forgotten existed. Carl never suspected. He'd comment on how happy I seemed, how I was glowing, must be all that swimming I was doing. He even bought me a new swimsuit, wrapped it up with a note that said, "For my mermaid." I cried in the bathroom after opening it, but not enough to stop what I was doing. The gifts got worse as the weeks went on. A spa day because I seemed stressed from all that design blog planning, as he put it. A weekend trip to Sedona he'd secretly booked for our anniversary. "Figured we could use some time, just the two of us," he said, showing me the reservation at the resort where we'd honeymooned. "Maybe talk about finally starting that family." My stomach turned. We'd been trying for kids for 3 years before I'd quietly gone back on birth control without telling him. Another secret, another betrayal. He still thought we were trying, still tracked my cycle on his phone, still got quietly hopeful every month. And I let him believe it because telling the truth would mean admitting I didn't want his children anymore. Didn't want anything that would tie me to this life I was already planning to leave. That sounds wonderful, I lied, already thinking of excuses to cancel. But the worst gift came on a random Thursday. I'd just returned from the pool house, hair still damp despite my careful styling, when Carl came home with a realtor. "Surprise," he said, beaming. "I know you've been talking about wanting space for a home studio. This is Melissa. She's going to show us some houses with room for your design business." The realtor smiled, shaking my hand while I died inside. Carl had been listening. All those casual complaints about not having space, about wanting to pursue my dreams, he'd heard them and acted. Found a realtor, researched neighborhoods, probably already run the numbers on what we could afford. "The first showing is Saturday," Melissa said. "A gorgeous place in Paradise Valley. 5 bedrooms, separate studio space, pool for the kids when they come." When, not if. Everyone's so certain about the future I was destroying in a pool house 20 feet away. "Carl," I started, but he was already pulling up photos on his phone. "Look at this one," he said, excited like a kid. "It has that Spanish tile you love, and the studio has its own entrance so clients wouldn't even have to come through the main house." I looked at the photos. A dream house for the life I'd claimed to want. The life he was trying to give me while I was giving myself to someone else. The irony that he was planning our future while I was actively destroying it made me want to scream. Ethan and I lived in a bubble that spring, pretending the real world didn't exist. He'd talk about running away together, starting fresh somewhere no one knew us. I'd let him dream out loud while knowing it was impossible. He was 22 with his whole life ahead of him. I was 38, married, tied to a mortgage and a life I'd built even if I no longer wanted it. "Leave him," Ethan would whisper. "We could be happy." "You don't want me," I'd reply. "You want the idea of me, the forbidden older woman. Once the novelty wears off, you'll see what everyone else sees, a bored housewife who gave up on herself." "That's not what I see." "Then you're not looking hard enough." But I couldn't stop. Every rational part of my brain screamed warnings, but my body overruled them all. I was addicted to the way he looked at me, touched me, made me feel like I mattered. Carl loved me, but it was a quiet love, worn smooth by years of familiarity. Ethan's desire was sharp and immediate and made me feel powerful in a way I'd forgotten was possible. The end came the way these things always do, stupidly and preventably. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Carl had left for a conference in Scottsdale, would be gone overnight. Ethan and I had gotten careless, drunk on our secret. We were in the pool house, lost in each other, when we heard the door open. Sharon stood there, home a day early from Europe, staring at us with horror that quickly shifted to rage. But it wasn't just Sharon. Behind her stood her sister Patricia, who'd driven her home from the airport. Patricia, whose daughter went to my book club. Patricia, whose husband played golf with Carl every Sunday. Patricia, who pulled out her phone and started taking pictures before Sharon could stop her. "Get dressed," Sharon said, voice deadly quiet. "Both of you, now." I've never felt shame like that moment. Scrambling for clothes under the gaze of women who'd been my friends, knowing that Patricia's photos were probably already being forwarded to her husband with some caption like, "You won't believe what I just saw." "Mom," Ethan started. "Don't," she cut him off. "Don't say a word. You're going to pack your things and go back to school, today." She turned to me, and the disgust in her eyes made me want to disappear. "And you're going to tell Carl yourself, or I will. You have 1 hour." "Sharon, please." 1 hour, Natalie, or I call him myself. And Patricia's already told Jim, so it's going to get back to him anyway. At least have the decency to tell him yourself. Patricia held up her phone. "Already sent to Jim. He golfs with Carl in 2 hours. TikTok Homewrecker." They left us there, Ethan and me, half-dressed and destroyed. He tried to touch me, to say something, but I recoiled. In the harsh light of discovery, he looked exactly like what he was. A kid who'd made a terrible mistake with someone old enough to know better. "This is bad," he said, master of understatement. "Your life will be fine," I said, pulling on my clothes with shaking hands. "You'll go back to school. This will be gossip for a week. You'll be the guy who banged the neighbor lady. Your frat brothers will probably high-five you. That's not. My life is over. Do you understand that? My actual life. My marriage, my home, my friends, everything. Over." "We knew this might happen." "No," I snapped. "You knew nothing. You're 22. You have no idea what I've just lost." I left him there and ran back to my house. My house for probably the last few hours I could call it that. Called Carl with hands that shook so badly I could barely hit the numbers. He answered on the second ring. "Hey babe, just got to the hotel. How's your day?" The normalcy of his voice, the casual affection, made what I had to say impossible. But Patricia's husband would be at the golf course in 90 minutes. "Carl, I need to tell you something." "What's wrong? You sound upset." "I've been having an affair." Silence. So long I thought the call had dropped. Then, "What did you just say?" "I've been having an affair with Ethan, from next door." "Ethan? Sharon's son? The kid?" "Yes." "The kid we've known since he was 7? The one whose graduation party we went to? That Ethan?" "Yes." More silence. Then a sound I'd never heard before and never want to hear again. My husband crying. Not sad tears, broken tears. The sound of a man processing that his entire life was a lie. "I'm coming home," he said finally. "Carl..." He hung up. An hour later, I heard his car in the driveway, too fast, tires squealing. He burst through the door like a storm. "Tell me she's lying," he said. His eyes were red, his tie askew. He'd driven 90 miles in an hour. "Sharon called me. Tell me she's lying." "She's not lying." He stared at me like I was a stranger. "How long?" 3 weeks. 3 weeks. While I was planning our future. While I was looking at houses for your studio. While I was... He stopped, laughed bitterly. "I bought fertility tests yesterday. Did you know that? Thought maybe we should check if everything was okay since it's been taking so long." The birth control pills hidden in my tampon box felt like they were burning through the bathroom cabinet. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "You're sorry? You fucked a child and you're sorry?" "He's not a child." Carl's fist went through the wall. I'd never seen him violent, never even seen him raise his voice. The jagged hole in the drywall seemed to shock him as much as me. "Don't," he said, deadly quiet. "Don't defend it. Don't try to make this okay. You fucked a kid in his parents' pool house while I was at work. While I was working overtime to buy you a house with a studio. While I was..." His voice broke. "While I was loving you." "Carl, please, get out." His voice was calm now, which was worse than the anger. "Pack whatever you can carry and get out of my house." "Where will I go?" "I don't care. A hotel, your sister's. Hell, go back to the pool house. Just get out of my sight before I do something we'll both regret." I packed a bag while he watched, taking only what I could fit in one suitcase. 15 years of life reduced to what I could carry. As I headed for the door, he spoke one more time. "I loved you," he said. "I would have done anything for you. All you had to do was talk to me. Tell me you were unhappy. We could have fixed it." "I know," I whispered. "No," he said. "You don't know. You have no idea what you've thrown away." He was right. I didn't understand until later, until I was living in a studio apartment, working retail because no one would hire someone with a 15-year gap in their resume, watching Carl rebuild his life without me. He kept the house, kept our friends, kept his dignity, started dating a woman from his firm 6 months later, someone age-appropriate who probably never looked twice at college boys. Ethan texted for a while. Sorry about how things ended, wishing we could talk, hoping I was okay. I never responded. What was there to say? That I'd ruined my life for someone who'd moved on to grad school girls within a month. That I'd destroyed a good man for a fantasy that was always doomed? That I'd become the cautionary tale whispered about at neighborhood barbecues? Sharon made good on her threat. The whole neighborhood knew within a week. I'd see former friends at the grocery store and they'd turn away. Parents pulled their teenagers inside when I walked by, like adultery was contagious. The scarlet letter was alive and well in suburban Phoenix. I moved to Tucson eventually, got a job at a department store, lived quietly and alone the way women like me should. Carl remarried 2 years later. I saw the announcement on Facebook before he blocked me. He looked happy, lighter, like I'd been a weight he'd finally shed. The worst part was finding out through my sister that his new wife was pregnant within 6 months. The family we'd supposedly been trying for, he created effortlessly with someone else. Someone who actually wanted his children. Someone who wasn't taking birth control behind his back while he tracked ovulation cycles and bought fertility tests. My sister told me other things too, during her monthly pity calls. How Carl had remodeled the kitchen I'd always complained about. How he'd gotten that promotion he'd been working toward. How his new wife had started a successful design business, the exact business I'd talked about but never pursued. She was living the life Carl had tried to give me, and thriving in it. "You could have had all of that," my sister said once, after too much wine. "He worshipped you, Natalie. Do you know what I would give to have a man look at me the way Carl looked at you?" "Please don't," I said. "No, you need to hear this. Do you know what he told me after the divorce? He said he would have forgiven you. If you'd come to him, admitted you were unhappy, even told him about the affair yourself, he would have tried to work through it. But finding out from Sharon, having Patricia's pictures forwarded to him at a golf course, being the last to know his wife was screwing the neighbor kid, that's what killed him." I hung up on her. But her words echoed in my studio apartment that smelled like the Indian restaurant downstairs. Carl would have forgiven me. The man whose trust I'd shattered, whose future I'd stolen, whose heart I'd broken, he would have fought for our marriage if I'd given him the chance. Instead, I'd chosen a 22-year-old who texted me for 2 weeks before moving on to a girl in his graduate program. Someone age-appropriate who didn't have to hide in pool houses or lie about book clubs. Someone whose life wasn't a cautionary tale. The last time I saw Carl was at a Whole Foods in Phoenix, 3 years after the divorce. I was visiting for my nephew's birthday, buying wine to get through the family gathering where everyone would carefully not mention my situation. He was in the produce section with his wife, tall, blonde, visibly pregnant. She was laughing at something he'd said, her hand on her belly, glowing with the kind of happiness I'd thrown away. He saw me. I know he did because he paused mid-reach for an apple, his whole body stiffening. But then his wife said something, touched his arm, and he turned to her with such tenderness it took my breath away. They walked past me like I was invisible, which I suppose I was. Just another stranger who happened to shop at the same store, not the woman who'd shared his bed for 15 years. I abandoned my cart and sat in my car crying until security knocked on my window to check if I was okay. I wasn't. Haven't been since that day in the pool house when I chose temporary desire over permanent love. Sometimes I Google Ethan. He's an engineer now, like his father, married to a girl he met in grad school. They look good together, age-appropriate, normal. The kind of couple that doesn't have to hide or lie or destroy other people's lives to be together. I still dream about that pool house sometimes. The chlorine smell, the afternoon light through the windows. The way I felt desired and alive and stupid enough to think that was worth more than 15 years of quiet, steady love. I wake up in my empty bed and remember Carl bringing me coffee every morning, rubbing my feet while we watched TV, planning our future together. I had everything. A devoted husband, a beautiful home, financial security, friends, respect, a life most people would envy. And I burned it all down for 3 weeks of feeling 25 again. That's the thing about affairs with younger men. They make you feel young until the moment they remind you exactly how old you are. How foolish, how replaceable, how easy it is to destroy something that took years to build. I drive by the old house sometimes when I'm in Phoenix. Carl's car is gone, replaced by a minivan. There's a swing set in the backyard now. He has the family we never got around to starting, with someone who didn't throw him away for a fleeting thrill. A new pool house stands there now. Sharon had the old one torn down and rebuilt. She probably couldn't stand to look at it. But I know what was there, what happened in that chlorine-scented sanctuary. How I chose the temporary over the permanent, the thrill over the real, the boy over the man. And now I live with the consequences. Alone at 41, starting over with nothing, the cautionary tale mothers tell their daughters. Don't be like that woman, the one who had everything and threw it away for someone who could have been her son, the one who destroyed a good man for a fantasy, the one who got exactly what she deserved. The pool house is gone, but I'm still underwater.